Hello, everyone. Welcome to Inside the Birds NFL Week 13 preview show. I'm Geoff Mosher, and of course, Week 13 already underway as we had the three Thanksgiving games, and then of course tonight you have the Black Monday game between the Raiders and the Chiefs. The Thanksgiving games, were they great matchups by team? No, but you definitely had some good games, some good division games. Obviously, starting with the Bears Lions game that had a crazy ending that we'll get into. Cowboys Giants is always competitive because the teams don't like each other. It's always a fun watch, even if the teams are not very good this year, and neither of them are very good. And the score and the play and the matchups reflected that, as you saw. But somewhat of an entertaining game. And then, of course, the night game with the Packers and the Dolphins. That one was probably the best matchup as far as what's at stake. And as you know anything about the Dolphins, you know that whenever they have to go travel and play in cold weather, windy weather, it's usually not a good situation for them. And their inability to win in cold temperatures and their inability to be a very prolific offense reared its head again against a Packers team that is quietly putting together a very nice season. In fact, that whole NFC North race now is just phenomenal. And the Lions have done an excellent job just, picking up where they left off last year. They didn't get it done. They didn't get to the Super Bowl. They came back, and you heard Dan Campbell lay it out on the line. They have won nothing. They have a point to prove, and you've seen that. They have played excellently all year long. Obviously, 11-1. So they put the pressure on the Eagles to have to beat the Ravens. We'll talk about that to try to stay just one game behind in the NFC top seed race. But the Lions right now look like just a great, great team. So complete. Going to be a very, very tough out in the NFC. But that whole division, Minnesota 9-2, Green Bay, I just mentioned 9-3, and then Chicago. Now they have become the Chargers of the NFC in inventing new ways to lose. Hail Marys, blocked field goals, and then of course botching the last play in their comeback attempt against the Lions. Now, I'm not going to say this to be contrarian. I'm really not. I've run this past a few people myself from the NFL because I think the Bears are very criticizable for how that game ended against the Lions. But I do think people are jumping on the whole they didn't take a timeout. They didn't take a timeout thing and just using that as a narrative and not really seeing the bigger picture. And Matt Eberflus is the head coach, so he's the guy who should be blamed. This is a situation that you have to drill in practice every week and you have to be prepared for it. And clearly, the Chicago Bears were not prepared as a team for that scenario because they completely botched it and flubbed it three ways to Sunday. But from what I didn't get to see the final game. I finally, I was able to watch the replay, but all the commentary has been Eberflus is an idiot. He didn't call a timeout. How do you end the game there without calling a timeout? And I'm not, that's where I stopped short. So if you go back to the situation, first of all, I think the play calling in the last part was terrible. Obviously, they had a chance there, first and 10 inside I think it was at the 25 of the Lions. I mean, you have to come away with a field goal there. You can't screw that up. But obviously, you get the second down sack. It's a bad sack. It looked like maybe it was supposed to be a draw. It doesn't work. And so now it's third and 22, and the clock is ticking down 25 seconds, right? People want Matt Eberflus right then and there to take a timeout. That's what I've heard. Why doesn't he call a timeout as soon as Caleb Williams is sacked? Well, I look at that situation and I say, why would you take a timeout immediately there? It's third down. You are out of field goal range, right? So if you take a timeout there on third and 22, all right, now you've got no timeout left to be able to throw a short pass to get yourself in field goal range, then call timeout to set up your field goal. If you burn your timeout immediately, then you're asking your offense on third and 22 to do what? Go throw the ball down the field to try to then convert 3rd and 22 and hope that there is just enough time left to then spike the ball and get your field goal unit in there. Well, that's tough on 3rd and 22. You wind up throwing the ball down the field, which is what happened anyway on the last play. So I don't blame Matt Eberflus there for not burning a timeout immediately after the sack because I don't think that that was his best option. The best option is it's 3rd and 22. You get your offense to the line of scrimmage. You run a play that can get you into field goal range, take your timeout, get your field goal unit on the field, kick the field goal, take your chances in overtime. Why does Caleb Williams not get as much criticism as Matt Eberflus for not getting the offense to the line of scrimmage quickly to get a playoff? Do they not practice that every week? Are you not in doing your 2 and 4 minute drill in practice? You have to be. So again, Matt Eberflus is the head coach. If his team wasn't prepared, and they're on their second offensive coordinator of the year so far, if the team wasn't prepared for that situation, then shame on Matt Eberflus. I can't believe that they don't practice 2 minute drill in practice because every team practices 2 minute drill. Every team should be prepared. That doesn't mean you're going to execute well. We can go back to the Eagles in the Super Bowl in 2004. Andy Reid, the Philadelphia Eagles, Donovan McNabb, not really operating their 2 minute drill, their fourth quarter hurry up offense very well and losing to the Patriots. So it happens even to the best of them. But you gotta it's not like Caleb Williams. I know he's a rookie, but it's not like he's new to the quarterback position. He's not Anthony Richardson, who only has 15 total quarterback starts in his career. This guy's been a quarterback since high school to Oklahoma to USC to now the Bears. He's got to know in that situation, I don't want to burn my timeout. I'm out of field goal range. I've got to get the offense to the line of scrimmage, and I've got to get a play call off. And even if my coaching staff is doing a bad job, and maybe they did, of getting a call in, then I've got to take the reins. I'm the number one pick. I have played quarterback all my life. I was considered transformational. I got to get my offense to the line of scrimmage, and I've got to run a play. All right. So I'm either going to try to hit a sideline route to get my receiver out of bounds to give me time so maybe get another shot to get the first down, or I got to run a play, get a quick completion, then burn the timeout and get my field goal. All right. Burning a timeout right after the sack leaves them at 3rd and 22 and no options because now you've got to throw the ball down the field for a first down or a touchdown. I mean, it's 3rd and 22. You gotta throw the ball quickly down the field, get a first down, and then hope there's enough time to spike the ball to get your field goal unit on. But in order to get a first down, you got to throw the ball past 22 yards, which is a downfield throw, which is what the Bears wound up doing anyway. Now you could say, all right, if you're the head coach, once you realize your quarterback is not getting the offense to the line of scrimmage and the time is ticking down and there's 15, 14 seconds left, that's when you got to call a timeout. You can't end the game there just the way it did without having called a timeout. All right, I can understand that a little bit. You've let so much time get off the clock. Your offense isn't executing well. It didn't get to the line of scrimmage. So now you got to call a timeout. But guess what? Again, timeout still leaves you at 3rd and 22. And now you have no timeout. So you have to throw the ball down the field. That's what they wound up doing. To me, the bigger issue, you want to put it on the head coach, that's fine. You want to put it on quarterback, that's fine. You want to put it on both of them, that's fine. To me, the issue was you didn't get to the line of scrimmage fast enough. You didn't get a play off fast enough. Taking a timeout immediately, to me, doesn't really change the course of what's going to happen at the end of the game. But that is the Bears. I'm sure Matt Eberflus will probably be fired and deserves it. They've lost a lot of games. In bad fashion. They're competitive. They have a very good defense. They fight hard. I'm sure a lot of people, I think the spread was 10.5 for that game. So I'm sure a lot of people thought the Bears were going to get annihilated. They did not. Caleb Williams is playing better. I think there's hope for this franchise, and they'll get some new blood in there next year, and we'll see what happens. Cowboys, Giants, what's there to say? Drew Lock played the game. The Cowboys have fought hard the last 2 weeks, and that doesn't surprise me. They're not a very good team. They're not playing very good teams. They obviously got a little bit of traction when they were able to take advantage of the Commanders, and they gave up the last second touchdown, but then the kicker misses the PAT, and then they return the onside kick for a touchdown. But you know what? They were in it. They were leading the Commanders by a touchdown. So a lot of people have counted the Cowboys out. Certainly they don't have much to play for at 5-7 now. You beat the Giants, that's great. Still have the Bengals, Panthers, Bucks, Eagles, Commanders. They're out of it to me for there's no shot for them to win the NFC East, of course, and I don't see any avenue for them to even become close to a seventh seed. I don't think they're very good. They'll probably stumble here down the stretch, even though they've lost two in a row. So basically, the Giants and Cowboys were just two teams playing it out, trying to give you something good on on Thanksgiving, and both of these teams really will not have much to play for the rest of the year. Uh, Packers Dolphins, as I mentioned, the Dolphins had an opportunity. The Dolphins had won two in a row, right? And they were telling you that they're back. They were telling you with Tua back as their quarterback and them scoring points that they were going to do it. They had scored 34 against the Patriots, 34 against the Raiders. They were 1-3 in a row, but they're almost a team that I felt had to win, not win out, but win a lot of their remaining games to get that last seed. Now, losing the Packers hurts them. You're 5-7. You got the Jets and Texans, though, up next. Texans aren't playing well. Jets are not good. So, can they get back on the horse here? Can they get to, win the next two games, get to 7-7? Then you finish with the 49ers, Browns, and Jets. There's an avenue here. I'm not going to count out any AFC team yet that doesn't win this weekend. Maybe if the Bengals don't win, maybe you'll start to say Bengals going to 4-8. I don't see it. Um, I mean, because we're really talking about here the Chargers, the Broncos, the Colts, the Dolphins, and the Bengals. Everybody else, you're out. Okay. So the Bengals will have to win, I think. They play Pittsburgh. We'll talk about that in a little bit for me to not count them out. I will if the Bengals lose to the Steelers, it's going to be very, very difficult. I don't really see an avenue for them unless a lot of teams lose. But the Dolphins, amazingly, because of their schedule, I think can still vie for a 6 or 7 seed. But they're going to have to beat the Jets at home, which they can do. They're going to have to go on the road and beat the Texans. It's an indoor game. You don't have to worry about the elements. Think that they can win that. Um, then they're going to have to come home to play the 49ers. We'll see what the 49ers are by then. Injuries have killed them. Then the Browns and the Jets at Cleveland, at New York. Now, if it comes down to the Dolphins having to win one or both of those last two games at Browns, at Jets, that's December, late December, early January, and the elements come into play. And we know the Dolphins don't play well in cold and windy weather. So we'll have to see what they are by the time they get to the last 2 weeks of the season. All right, tonight's game, you got Raiders at Chiefs. The Chiefs will get Pacheco back. The Chiefs are they're 10-1. Uh, they have the number one seed right now. I think there's a chance they could lose it to Buffalo with how things finished because the Chiefs just have not played great football. They've played just well enough to win games, and it wouldn't shock me if that's the way the game went tonight, even though that they're 12-point favorites. It would not surprise me, even with the Raiders having to start Aiden O'Connell. If this game was close, it's a heated rivalry. Raiders Chiefs, it's Black Friday, it's prime time. So I expect the Raiders to show up and be representative. And I expect the Chiefs to play down to their opponent like they tend to do. I do think the Chiefs will win. They'll get Isaiah Pacheco back, so they'll have a little bit of momentum there. But they have to win this game to continue to get that number one seed in the AFC because the Bills are pushing them. And the Bills, of course, have beaten them, so they have the head-to-head in a tiebreaker scenario. So I expect a good game, but I do think the Chiefs will win. I would be a little worried, though, if I were a betting man about taking them as a 12-point favorite. Sunday games, Chargers at the Falcons. Now, this is the type of game where I have been burying the Falcons for the last few weeks, and then they went into the bye. I call them the most undependable team that there is. They're 6-5. It feels like there's 3 or 4 games against good teams that they lost that they should have won. It feels like there's 2 or 3 games against bad teams that they lost. They got buried at home against Seattle, which is not a great team, good team, but not a great team. You shouldn't get buried at home against Seattle. Uh, they lost to the Broncos. They were humiliated by the Broncos. The Broncos are a good team, but they lost by 32 points to the Broncos going in to the bye. So this is the time where, of course, you think the Falcons are just completely out of it, and they go into the bye on 2 straight losses. And this is the game that they'll come out and watch. They'll beat the Chargers by 2 touchdowns because that's who the Falcons are. You have no idea from week to week who they are. The Chargers, 7-4, lost a tough game against Jim Harbaugh, against his brother, against the Ravens. They didn't really play well in the second half. Honestly, didn't play very well 2 weeks in a row in the second half. They didn't play great against the Bengals either, until the Bengals missed a couple of field goal attempts. And then finally, Justin Herbert made a play and they were able to win that game, or else they'd be on a 2 game losing streak. The Chargers would be, if they had lost that game to the Bengals, but they won. But they did lose to the Ravens. The score wasn't as close. It was really a two touchdown type of game. They're 7-4. Their schedule gets rough here, folks. So the Chargers are hanging on by a thread. They've got obviously to play the Falcons. They got to travel across country to play the Falcons. Then they'll have the Chiefs, the Bucks, the Broncos the next 3 games before they finish off with the Patriots and the Raiders. So this will be some tough sledding for 3 weeks here for the Chargers. And there's a lot of teams in the AFC West that I just mentioned gunning for those 6 and 7 teams that'll have their eye on what the Chargers do. The Falcons, meanwhile, come out of the bye. They've got the Chargers, then they have to play the Vikings. Then they get Raiders, Giants, Commanders, Panthers. Winnable games there. I just don't know who the Falcons are. Very frustrating team if you're a Falcons fan. Steelers at Bengals. Steelers are 3-point dogs in Cincinnati. So this is how you know this is what Vegas looks at, the odds makers look at. They know that the Bengals know they absolutely must win this game, or else they fall to 4-8, and you can kiss their playoff chance goodbye. They have to play the Steelers twice now in their final 5 games. So you lose this one at home to the Steelers, then you can just kiss it all goodbye. Meanwhile, the Steelers, they're 8-3. They're coming off that very odd loss in the snow against the Browns, where Jameis Winston had the heroics, but they're still trying to win the AFC North. They have a good chance to do that. Could they get the top seed? I mean, they would need a couple of things to go their way with the Bills and with the Chiefs. But right now, their mission is to win the AFC North. They've done Mike Tomlin's done a great coaching job this year. They win this game, they can help themselves in 2 ways. They can help themselves end the Bengals season. They can help themselves continue to stay atop the AFC North, and maybe even have a chance to push for the top seed, if not the number 2 seed in the AFC playoffs. All right. They need the Bengals. The Bengals just have to play some defense. They've had 2 heartbreaking losses in a row to the Ravens and then to the Chargers, both, sort of last possession type games. If they want to win against the Steelers, they just need to play some defense. And if they can win this game and get to 5-7, they got the Cowboys, the Browns in the next 2 games. So can you get to 7-7 and then all of a sudden see the light to a 7th seed? Because they'll finish up against the Broncos and Steelers. That'll be tough for them. But the bottom line for the Bengals is 1 foot at a time. Beat the Steelers, you got a chance. Lose to the Steelers, your season is done. Cardinals at Vikings. Cardinals are 3.5-point underdogs here. And this is an interesting game. The Vikings are a very quiet 9-2. The Cardinals had some great momentum. This is what I feared. I mentioned this in last week's show. I mentioned that the Cardinals were going into the bye on a 4-game winning streak, and that the bye, you'd love to win going into the bye and feel that, but you hate to lose the momentum. Well, that's what happened. They go into the bye, 4 straight wins, they come out, and then they lose to Seattle. And instead of being 7-4 and in control of the NFC West, you're 6-5. And now the NFC West is anybody's division to win. And now you got to go and play the Vikings on the road. And the Vikings have been a very good team that nobody really talks about. They're 9-2. I, I suspect that, and you can throw myself in this boat. It's just that people don't think the Vikings will win anything because of Sam Darnold. But he's already, listen, he's going to turn the ball over. He does that. But they have a very good defense. They have a good passing game, an improving offensive line. They're going to be a tough out. You have to make Sam Darnold make those bad throws or fumble a ball, and he's played cleaner lately. And the Vikings finish with the Falcons. After this, they play all right. So they play the Cardinals, which won't be easy, but again, they're 3.5 point favorites. And then they got the Falcons, the Bears, the Seahawks, the Packers, and the Lions. Now, at 9-2, they could very easily be 10, 11, 12, 13-2, and then facing the Packers and the Lions the last 2 weeks. All right. So those last 2 weeks could make a difference in becoming the surprise NFC North champion, or maybe you finish 13-4, and that's a really, really impressive record for a fifth seed. All right. Maybe even a sixth seed, depending on what the Packers do. NFC North is a really good division. All right, Colts at Patriots. The Colts are still in it, 5-7. Now, this is the type of game they have to win. All right, they have to shake off their loss to the Lions last week. I thought it was going to be closer. It was one of the games I picked the Colts to cover. I think it was 7.5. They didn't. They lost by double digits. Okay, the Lions are really good. But now you get, I don't want to call it a gift because you have to go on the road, but the Patriots aren't very good. They're 3-9. They play hard and have been better since Drake May took over. And Drake May is showing you he can play some football. The Patriots got to feel pretty good about what they've seen from Drake May, maybe even more so than what the Colts can say they've seen out of Anthony Richardson. However, the Colts are in a better spot. They can make the playoffs. They're 5-7. They've got to win this game, though. They absolutely have to win this game to get to 6-7, or else you might start to write them off if they can't win this game as well. It's right there in front of them, the Colts. It's not going to be easy, but when you're playing a 3-9 team, you got to win that game. And, it'll be, you go into, it's amazing that their bye week teams still have the bye. But if they win this game and get to 6-7 going into the bye, they've got, after the bye, the Broncos, Titans, Giants, Jags. I mean, if you're the Colts, you got to think I can go 3-1 in that scenario. So if I get to 6-7 and go 3-1, then I finish 9-8. Will that get me the seventh seed? Could in the AFC. So we'll see how that goes for the Colts. Seahawks at Jets. Seahawks are 2 point favorites. Now, the Seahawks, who, one of the more inconsistent teams in the NFL, have won two straight coming out of their bye week. They've beaten the Niners and the Cardinals. Those are two huge wins because it got them right back in the NFC West. In fact, I think they are, at the time I recorded this, I guess by percentage points, they might be leading the NFC West. There's a lot of football left to play. But this is a gift for them too. You got to travel across the country. You already did that a couple times this year. You beat Atlanta in Atlanta. You beat New England in New England. So now you're playing a Jets team. Rodgers is banged up. Bryce Hall's a little banged up. The Jets have nothing to play for. Yes, they're coming out of the bye. They've been a terrible team all year. They have fallen short of any expectations. If you're the Seahawks and you want to be a playoff team, if you want to be a division champion, this is the type of game that you have to win. Geno Smith has played good football. Jackson Smith and Jigba has come on over the last few weeks. The Jets' pass defense, amazingly, has been awful this year, even with Sauce Gardner. Sauce has just not played well. I don't know if he's just fallen victim to the defense in general not being good over the last few weeks. I don't know if it's because Jeff Ulbrich has gone from defensive coordinator to now head coach and doesn't have as much time to spend with the defense. But the defense for the Jets, specifically the pass defense, has been lousy. So this is an opportunity for Geno, for Metcalf, for Jackson Smith and Jigba to get it going, to get Kenneth Walker going. Seahawks 2 point favorites. You got to like you have to smell the opportunity here if you are Seattle to win this division. Because you right now have a shot to go to 7-5 and start to take control if you beat the Jets. Titans at Commanders. Washington is sliding, folks. And let's be honest, the QB just has not played well since he broke his ribs. They have lost three straight games. They've basically fallen out of the NFC East race. I don't know if they'll be able to make up their gap between them and the Eagles now. Of course, the Eagles still have to play the Ravens on Sunday, and then they'll have to play the Steelers. So the Commanders have a favorable schedule, but they have to play better. They've lost three straight. They were losing badly. Well, not badly, but they were losing to a Cowboys team that was not very good. And they got this amazing touchdown to McLaurin, and then the kicker misses the extra point. I mean, this was the team that was winning on the Hail Mary a couple weeks ago, and now they're losing like the way the Bears were losing. They're defunct offensively. They're missing a point after attempt to tie a game. Then they have their onside kick return for a touchdown. It feels like they're starting to get haunted, the Commanders. So the veteran leadership of that team has got to step up, has got to right the ship. You can't let the Titans, who have a little bit of momentum now, come and into your house and hand you a fourth straight loss. I can understand losing to the Steelers, close game, rough game. A last second loss because of a Mike Williams big catch. Then you go play the Eagles and you just don't have it that day and you lose. And then you play the Cowboys, a team you should beat, and you just don't have your A game. So now you've lost three games in a row. You cannot let the Titans come in, and the Titans are buoyed a little bit. Won a couple of games here. Well, not really a couple of games. They won a game over the Texans, though. So maybe they're running the ball better. Levis is playing just a little bit better, turning the ball over less. You can't let the Titans come in here and win this game if you're Washington, because guess what? You're not guaranteed a playoff spot anymore. It was great when you were 7-2 and you were in control of the NFC East and you were thinking about, all right, I could be a 2 seed, I could be a 3 seed. Guess what? There's too many good teams in the NFC North and the NFC West fighting to make the playoffs for you, if you're Washington, to slip up. You could mess around and find yourself completely out of the playoffs if you don't make the layups. Titans, 5.5 point underdogs. Commanders have to get their ship straighted and rewrited. They have to get their house back in order and win this game, or else you're going to lose faith in their ability to even make the playoffs. Texans and Jags. Now, the Texans are 5 point favorites. And now this is the opposite of Washington. They're also not playing well, and they just lost to the Titans, but they're going to win their division. They're going to win their division because their division stinks. They're not right. I've been saying it for weeks. I think the Texans are ripe to get either a fourth seed, maybe a 3 or 4 seed, probably the 4 seed, and then lose in the 4 or 5 game. There's just something not right with them. They're 7-5. They'll get to 8-5 if they beat the Jags. They'll beat the Jags. They'll get to 8-5. They'll probably win 10 games. Like I said, their division stinks. They'll get into the playoffs as a division winner. So they'll get either a 3 or 4 seed. But I can see them losing in the first round. Their offensive line has not been good. Defense has been a little leaky lately. I don't know what's going on with them. They're just not what I thought they were going into the year. They are 5 point favorites against the Jags, though. The Jags will get Trevor Lawrence back. Big deal. What does that mean? They're playing out the string. They're not a good team. And they'll probably be cleaning house at the end of the year. All right, 4 o'clock games. Rams at Saints. This game's interesting because the Saints are 4-7. They're coming out of the bye with 2 straight wins. And I mentioned that Darren Rizzi, who's their interim head coach, was a guy who's very respected around the league. Good young coach, great mind. Special teams coaches always seem to connect well and always seem to get the interim head coaching job because they deal with both the offense, they deal with the defense, they deal with the whole team. They're usually good connectors because they have to deal with a lot of young players, rookies, first and second year players, bottom of the roster players, right? And they got to motivate those guys to play well on special teams. That's why special teams coordinators, especially young, energetic ones like Darren Rizzi, tend to get the interim head coaching job when a team fires a head coach, but it almost works against them. They almost never become the head coach the next year because the team wants to clean house and start new, usually with either a new, the offensive mind, the guy who was touched by McVay or Shanahan, or you get some great defensive coach. So I don't know if Darren Rizzi will be the next Saints head coach, but he's off to a good start by getting those two straight wins. And now they get a chance to get another win against a very inconsistent team. The Rams, you can put the Rams up there with the Seahawks and the Falcons as some of the one of the most maddening teams in the NFL, and you just never know what you're going to get from week to week. The Rams are 5-6, and they absolutely need to win this game because if they don't and go to 5-7, they have the Bills and the Niners up next. So 5-9 would be very, very feasible or realistic for them if they get to 5-7. Um, they do play the Niners tough all the time, but they need this game, and it's a winnable game. But I can't rubber stamp it. The Rams are just too inconsistent. I loved them as sort of a dark horse going into the year. I picked them to win the NFC West. They are certainly in contention, and if they win this game, you'll say, okay, all right, they're a little bit back. They're 6-6, and 6-6 in the NFC West might put you in first place. But if you lose this game, I will lose faith in them. And my faith already has started to dwindle because they've lost a couple of games this year that I thought that they would win. I even thought they would give the Eagles a better game than they did. I think I picked the Rams to win. I just thought that maybe they would catch the Eagles on a bad week, and that just didn't happen. They have to get right up front with their offensive and defensive line if they're going to win these games down the stretch. They have the talent, especially on offense, to do it, but Stafford just hasn't looked comfortable this year, and the injuries have really hurt them. So this is a crossroads game. You win if you're the Rams. You're feeling pretty good about yourself, getting rewrited, even with the Bills and the Niners up next. You hope to win one of the two and keep yourself in the thick of the NFC West race. You lose, yeah, you're still in the NFC West, but you're on a two-game losing streak, and I don't know, things just won't be feeling right if you're the Rams and you lose. You got to start, winning the games that you should win. In fact, if they lose this game to the Saints, yeah, that would be losing 3 out of 4. And again, you would just start to lose faith in the Rams' ability to pick up the pieces. Bucks at Panthers. The Bucks are 6-point favorites. Now, the Bucks are going to have an eye on that Chargers-Falcons game earlier in the day because if the Falcons lose and then the Bucks beat the Panthers, both teams will be 6-6. Now, the Bucks have already lost twice to the Falcons. So 6-6 doesn't necessarily help them. They need to be a game over the Falcons to win the division, but the Falcons do not have an easy schedule. And you'll take it if you're the Bucks. After going into the bye with all those losses in a row that they had, you come out, offense gets rolling against the Giants. If you can beat the Panthers, who aren't a rollover anymore, but you should beat the Panthers. All right. You start to get yourself to back to 500. The Bucks then have the Raiders, Chargers, Cowboys, Panthers, Saints in their last 5. I mean, if I'm the Bucks and I'm 6-6 and I see I got the Raiders on the schedule, the Cowboys on the schedule, the Panthers again, I end the year with the Saints. I'm feeling pretty good about my opportunity to get that 1-game lead against the Falcons, who again have been one of the most inconsistent teams in the NFL. So the Panthers are not a rollover. They had won 2 straight. They had beaten the Saints. They had beaten the Giants. And then, they blew it against the Chiefs. They had Kansas City on the ropes, but they're not going to beat Kansas. You knew Kansas City was going to figure out a way to pull out that game. The Chiefs just play to the level of their opponent. They do it all the time. They obviously got what they needed to get the field goal. But that was still, to me, sort of a moral. I know there's no moral victories in the NFL, but for the Panthers to have won 2 straight and then having the Chiefs on the ropes last year, getting better play from Bryce Young, I'll just say this: the Bucks have to be careful here. They can't just expect to roll into Carolina and play their B minus game and expect to win. The Bucks can't lose momentum. I picked them to win this division about 3 or 4 weeks in. I said I thought they were a little bit. I said I thought Atlanta was the better team, but I think the Bucks will wind up winning the division. I believe that's what I said, and it looks like right now things can go their way. They can do that. All right, we obviously know the Eagles and the Ravens. Obviously, the odds makers think that this is an even game on a neutral field. That's why the Ravens are 3-point favorites. You got some MVP candidates on the field: Lamar Jackson, Saquon Barkley. Maybe you throw Derrick Henry in that mix, depending on how the game or the last few weeks materializes. Maybe Jalen Hurts can get his name into that mix. The Eagles just haven't been enough of a passing team, I think, for Jalen Hurts to be the MVP over Saquon Barkley, who has just done some unbelievable, almost inhuman things when carrying the football this year. So he's got a really good chance to get to 2,000 yards. He's got a good chance to be the first NFL MVP as a running back since I think Adrian Peterson. So we'll see what happens in that game. We'll of course have that. We have that covered. Me, Adam, Greg Cosell. We'll have it covered on the Inside the Birds pregame show. The night game, Sunday night game, 49ers are 7-point dogs in Buffalo. The Niners are 5-6. They've had so many injuries. Obviously they had a chance last week to flip the script on that record, but Bryce Purdy didn't start, and the Packers were just going to be too much for them. We'll see what happens with Purdy. I know he's still banged up. This team has lost two straight games. They need to get healthy. I won't count them out if they lose to the Bills, and I think they'll probably lose, but I won't count them out only because it's the NFC West. We have no idea what Seattle's going to do. We have no idea what the Rams are going to do against the Saints, and we have really no idea what the Cardinals are going to do against the Vikings. So it feels like the 49ers can lose this game, lose three in a row, but still sort of get right because after this, they have the Bears, the Rams, Dolphins, Lions, Cardinals. So the Lions game is going to be pretty fascinating depending on what the 49ers record is at that point. But if they're not as hurt, if they're not injured after this Bills game, I can see them beating the Bears. The Rams always give them trouble, but they can beat the Rams. They can surely beat the Dolphins. And then you got Lions, Cardinals. Can you take one of those? If you lose to the Lions, can you beat the Cardinals at the seasoning of the year? So you wind up winning, you know, four of your last five. Is that enough? I don't know. We'll see. We'll see if 9 wins is enough to win the NFC West. It wouldn't shock me if it was. Monday night game, Browns at Broncos. The Browns are 5.5-point dogs in Denver. It's about right. Jameis Winston, he's auditioning to be on the starter for some team. He looked good in upsetting the Steelers in the snow. It was, I guess, a storybook ending there for Jameis Winston. He had that win against the Ravens in his first start too. I don't think the Browns are a very good team. They're sort of a week to week type team. Will be a tough matchup for them. The Broncos get better by the week. They have an elite defense. They're getting better offensively. The Broncos are 7-5, and they know they can get a lot closer to stamping their playoff ticket with a win. You go to 8-5, right? They're not going to win the AFC West, obviously, but they have a good chance to get that sixth or seventh seed in the AFC playoff race, and beating the Browns, which they should do at home, just gets them a lot closer. You got to consider what Sean Payton has done. He'll probably be a candidate for Coach of the Year, depending on how things finish. I think you can even talk about Vance Joseph as a candidate for Assistant Coach of the Year. That is a no-name defense other than Patrick Surtain, and it's been really rough on a lot of quarterbacks. A lot of quarterbacks better than Jameis Winston have struggled against this Broncos defense. So you got to look for the Broncos to win this game at home and see if they can finish out the season and continue to stack wins and get into the playoffs. I could see the Broncos being a very difficult first round opponent for a 2 or a 3 seed if they get the 6 or the 7. I could see that. I could say it'll be a very interesting game. Won't be in Denver, of course, but that Broncos team can travel. They can play some defense, can get just enough plays from their running game and passing game to give somebody some fits there in the first round of the playoffs. All right, my 3 picks against the spread. Last week I was 2-1. I had the Broncos covering their 5 against the Raiders. I had the Dolphins covering their 7 against the Patriots. Both of those teams covered those fairly easily. I lost on the Colts. They were getting 7.5. I didn't think the Colts were going to beat the Lions, but I thought they would cover the 7.5. I was wrong, lost by double digits. So I went 2-1, and I am 20-16 overall through the first 12 weeks. This week, I like a lot of road teams. The Steelers are getting 3 at the Bengals. If the Steelers don't win this one outright, I can see them at least, losing by 1 on a last second field goal or something like that. So I'm going to take the Steelers and getting the 3 points against the Bengals. Bucks at Panthers. Bucks are favored to win by 6. I don't like division games where the favorite on the road is 6 point favorite, but I think the Bucks are smelling their opportunity here, and they are a very difficult offense to stop. Even without Godwin, they've been pretty good, especially with Mike Evans back. So Baker Mayfield playing well. I think they can beat the Panthers by 6, even on the road. And if you couldn't tell by the way I was describing the Jets, I like the Seahawks to once again travel to the East Coast and win a game there. They're 2 point favorites, so all they got to do is win by a field goal to cover. So I like the Seahawks to cover that 2 against the Jets. So we will see how I do. And everybody, as I say every week, enjoy your football watching. Hope you had a great Thanksgiving. We got the holidays around the corner, and we're about to, after this week, really get into what I always say right after Thanksgiving is the home stretch of the NFL, where the games just ratchet up in intensity. You'll start to see some really wacky games, some big upsets. The last 4 to 5 weeks of the NFL season is certainly more exciting. I can't believe it's already here, but away we go. All right, guys, catch you next week on the next show.